Hey, what's up, VC? It's Steve again, Harmless Rebel. Just gonna do a little What's Spinning, a vinyl edition of What's Spinning. Been listening to it, nothing but vinyl the last couple days, actually until right now. This is the first CD I've listened to. This is Let There Be Rock the Movie live in Paris, AC/DC. This is from the Bonfire box set. I don't actually have the box set. I picked this up at a used store for $3 or $4.99. Really cool to have this though. So like I said, I've been on kind of a vinyl spree the last 2 days. I've listened to a whole stack, and I just wanted to share a little bit of it with you because it's not stuff that I share all the time. Started yesterday morning. I was just kind of in a chill mood. I wanted something really good to listen to, and I pulled this out. I haven't listened to this in probably a year or so, but pulled out Derek and the Dominos' Layla, and what is it? And other assorted love songs. Just an amazing album. I don't hear enough people talk about this, and it's funny. I was talking to the guy, the owner of my local record store, and he said that he's got dozens of copies of this, really nice first pressings, and nobody buys it. And he said he's just never understood it. If you've never, I mean, we've all heard the song Layla, but this is an amazing album. And the real standout to me on here is one that I've never heard anybody talk about. And it's the Eric Clapton cover of Little Wing. Everybody talks about the Stevie Ray Vaughan cover, which was good. I've always thought Jimi Hendrix was better. I think this cover is better than the Stevie Ray Vaughan cover too. And what's cool about this one is they kind of change it a little bit. It's still the same basic song, and they actually do the lyrics, which Stevie Ray doesn't. But they add to the riff in a really cool way. And it's something that I really dig. And I'm trying to think what year this came out. This was 72. So this was right after Jimmy died. But, Clapton was a really big fan of Jimi Hendrix. And it's really cool that he kind of did that as a tribute shortly after his death. And then I moved into some Bowie. Bowie's always a good one for me. You guys have heard me talk about Bowie quite a bit. I started off by listening to Low, which I've talked about the Berlin era. The Berlin era is my favorite era of David Bowie. I love this stuff. I think a lot of people list this as their favorite album, or this is the best of the Berlin era. I actually prefer Heroes, which I've talked about before. That's my favorite Bowie album. Low's got some great songs on it too. So I went ahead and spun this. This is a early repress. I want to say this was late 77 when this one was repressed. But just an amazing album. I like the B-side of this the same way I like the B-side of Heroes. They get into those really cool instrumentals. It's him and Brian Eno doing the writing, and they do some really cool stuff. And just some kind of jazz-inspired instrumentals in there. Really good. If you've never checked out this era of Bowie, I highly recommend it, especially Heroes, but this one would be a close second. And then I actually listened to these today, just a little bit ago, and these are cool too. These are soundboard recordings that I picked up 6 or 7 months ago. Watch out when you're picking these up. I have noted, and it's one of the things I noticed with this one, there's a lot of crossover between the different ones, and a lot of times it's the same companies making them, and they'll put different record labels on the backs of them, which is what happened here. But I see these things going for crazy money. I've seen these two specifically going for like $35, $40, and you can find them all over the place for under 20. So just, watch, don't let these stores rip you off on some of this stuff that they're getting for next to nothing. Regardless, I picked these up at, I think I picked them up at Half Price Books, new. Second and Charles had them new too for like $35, and then Half Price Books had them for like $16.99. So, regardless, the first one is We Could Be Heroes. This is Bowie live in Japan, and it doesn't say the date on this one. However, 3 of the songs off of this one are on this one. This is Under the Moonlight. And this is the very best of the Sound and Vision concerts. These are from concerts in 1990. Based on the songs on here, and this one gives the dates. This one was from Tokyo, 16 May 1990. And the reason I know that is because 3 of the songs from this are on this very best of soundboard recording. It's the same exact recording. You can tell by what he says leading into the song. They're great though. Both of these are the sound quality is really good. They've both got some favorites of mine. This one you got China Girl. I'm not gonna list them all, but China Girl, Ziggy Stardust, Young Americans Heroes, Gene Genie, Rock and Roll Suicide. And this one is 8 songs. This one is actually 11 songs. And has an even better, you got Ziggy Stardust, Life on Mars, Starman, Space Odyssey, Suffragette City, Heroes, Let's Dance, Modern Love, and that's not even all of them. Really good. I love these soundboard recordings. I've picked up a bunch for Bowie. I've picked up 6 or 7 for AC/DC. I've picked them up for Alice in Chains. And I picked up a bunch for Aerosmith. And I haven't been disappointed by any of them. They've all been really good. Now, next, after I listened to Low yesterday, Melinda Murphy, who I was just turned on to actually by Billy, and then she heard about me through Billy, and she showed this album in her most recent video, and this kind of sent me down a rabbit hole the last 2 days. So she showed Miles Davis in a Silent Way, which is an amazing early fusion album. When was this one? I'm trying to think what year this was. 69. And just really light fusion. You got the introduction of guitar on here. The electric organ. Really killer album. I love this album. She showed this when she was showing some MoFi pressings. And I hadn't listened to this in at least a year. So I decided to pull this out. And then, like I said, it just kind of led me down a little rabbit hole. So from there, I pulled out this bad boy, which is just one of the all-time. I mean, it literally is one of the best albums ever recorded. And I just felt like giving this a spin. I picked this up about 6 months ago, and I hadn't actually listened to it yet. I have other copies of this. I have multiple pressings of this. This is by far the best pressing I've ever heard. This thing sounds amazing. The bass on here, I had to turn my stereo down. It's just so beautiful and so clear, and the bass just it will shake your room. It sounds phenomenal. But this is the MoFi pressing of Kind of Blue. Again, just one of the all-time great albums. For those of you that haven't gotten into jazz, or that are kind of want to test the waters with jazz, the perfect starting point. And most of you, whether you listen to jazz or not, or whether you know it or not, you know the song So What. That is probably the most famous jazz song out there. I can't think of anything as well known. So highly recommend this one. It still pops up from time to time you can still get it for about $50. It's in this nice little box. It's a double 45. Like I said, I have never heard of a copy that sounds better than this. You can still get it for $55, which is about what it was brand new. And the prices did go up into the 70s and 80s, and they announced they were going to do a second pressing, and the prices of this first pressing have gone down a little bit. So I would get it while you still can, because once they stop pressing this, the prices will go back up again. From there, I pulled out not just one of my all-time favorite albums, the album that really got me experimenting in jazz and funk and various styles outside of the hard rock and heavy metal realm that I grew up in. And this is the end sound from Way Out from the Beastie Boys. And I've talked about this before. Again, a lot of you know these songs, whether you realize it or not. Most of these are off of about half the songs on here are off of Check Your Head and and Ill Communication. It's the jazz funk fusion songs that were kind of mixed into those two albums, and then also a couple of B-sides, and then a few of the songs that were released as rap songs, the jazz fusion that they did in the background. This album has been on my want list. I bought the CD in 95 or 96 when it first came out. So how I got into where I wasn't a real big fan of those jazz and funk instrumentals on the albums when they were initially released. I thought they were okay. I wanted the hip hop though. That's what I wanted to hear. I wanted to hear the Beastie Boys being the Beastie Boys. And then I saw them on the Ill Communication tour in Phoenix, Arizona at Compton Terrace. And I was blown away when in between their popular songs, they would flow into these jazz and funk instrumentals, and they blew me away. I fell in love with the stuff. Shortly about a year later, they released this on CD. I bought it and I played it nonstop. It was released by the French Fan Club that same year on vinyl. That's the only vinyl pressing it had seen, and those were going for $100 for decent condition, up into the close to $200. And they finally released this last year, and it sounds beautiful. You can get it for $20 or so. This one I highly recommend checking out. This is also a really good introduction if you don't want to dive all the way into jazz. This is a really cool mixture of funk and jazz with a little bit of hip hop mixed in with it. And whether you know it or not, man, these guys are, Mike D especially, his drum work on here is phenomenal. They do such a good job on all of these. And again, highly, highly, highly recommend picking this one up. So then from there, again, I was just in the jazz mood from that point, and ended up pulling this one out. This is one I bought when it first came out about 6 or 7 months ago, and I just hadn't gotten around to listening to it. This is Miles Davis and John Coltrane, The Final Tour. This is from Copenhagen in 1960. There is a 3 or 4 CD set, bootleg set that's been going around for years with this, with these recordings on there. This was finally released last year by Legacy. Did a great job. It sounds amazing. This one is a Barnes & Noble exclusive. It's on red vinyl. I usually like colored vinyl. For some reason with jazz records, colored vinyl just seems wrong. I don't know why. If it's metal, I'm cool with red vinyl. For some reason, it just kind of throws me off. Regardless, this has So What and So What on Kind of Blue. It's about 8 minutes long. This is an almost 15-minute version of it. That's amazing. And this is almost the same lineup. The only difference here is Bill Evans wasn't on here, and neither was Cannonball Adderley. But you still got Miles Davis, Coltrane, Wynton Kelly, Paul Chambers, and Jimmy Cobb, who was... Yeah, Jimmy Cobb was on Kind of Blue, too. So it's the same basic lineup from here. And, man, it's really good. Really good. They do some slight changes and add a little bit to So What, just to change it up a tiny bit. And I really dug it. I gave this a couple of spins. I'll be spinning this a few more times. Recommend checking that one out. From there, went the free route and pulled out a little bit of Ornette Coleman. Not my favorite. I'd probably put this right in the middle of pack for Ornette. My favorites from him are still Free Jazz and The Shape of Jazz to Come. This is Ornette and tenor. Still pretty good. I just don't think he's locked in here as much as he is on those other two. And this came out right in that same era. This may have been a year or two after Shape of Jazz to Come, I believe. This was 62. Still really good, though. I still really dig this. And still, if you're a fan of Ornette Coleman, definitely worth checking out. I do like the B-side of this one better than the A-side. The band just seems to have it tighter on the B-side of this one. And then last but not least, another one of the all-time great jazz albums. I've talked about Hank Mobley being one of my favorites. I pull this out quite a bit. This usually makes, this is definitely his best album, which is not saying a lot because the 3 albums that I would put right next to it are all right there. But what really stands out with this one is who plays with him, and you'll see why in a sec. But Hank Mobley, unfortunately, his later stuff in the 60s, and it just wasn't as good, and he kind of fell from being kind of one of the premier guys to kind of a second tier guy, with the exception of this album. This album usually makes it into the top 20 to top 40 jazz albums of all time. And this is, of course, Soul Station. And it's not just his playing that makes this album so good. You've also got Art Blakey, who, you know, I don't even need to say anything else. And you've also got Paul Chambers and Wynton Kelly, who, as I mentioned, were also part of Miles Davis's band for Kind of Blue. So it's just kind of an all-star cast that just came together and created another perfect album. This is the 2014 Blue Note pressing. I actually have multiple copies of this and didn't even know it. This is one of those albums that if I find it in good shape for cheap, and I found it for like 12 bucks, I pick it up. This is definitely one worth passing on to somebody. But again, another one. And that's just kind of where I ended it. Like I said, just kind of sent me down this little jazz spiral for the last couple days. If you guys aren't subscribed to Melinda's channel, definitely check her out. I'll put a link down below. Great channel, great mix of stuff. She's just a lot of fun. That's it, VC. Take care, and I'll put something else up soon. Bye.